Battlestar Galactica is amazing. It's legitimately one of the best shows ever made, and it's kind of criminal how underappreciated it is. When people talk about the best TV shows, this often doesn't even make the list. Hell, I wouldn't be surprised if some people, especially in the younger generations, haven't even heard of this show before. But I think there's actually a pretty good reason as to why. It was competing with some of the best and most creative shows ever made that had either just come out or were at least extremely popular. The Sopranos, Lost, Band of Brothers, The Wire, Alias. These were massively popular shows on major networks like AMC and HBO. Battlestar Galactica, or BSG as it's sometimes called, came out on the Sci-Fi Channel, which, besides Stargate, didn't really have any super popular shows at the time. Now, I'm not saying that BSG did poorly either. In fact, its pilot, which was actually a miniseries, but I'm not going to get into that right now, did quite well, with millions tuning in to watch it. However, BSG was averaging around 2 million viewers, and The Sopranos was averaging about 12 million, so again, good, but nowhere near the top. And, in my opinion, BSG should be regarded as one of the best shows ever made. It should be up there with the greats. Everything about this show is top tier, from the writing to the acting to the filmmaking itself. This show is so good that literally only 1 out of the 74 episodes is actually bad, which is really impressive. I really don't like that episode though, but I'll get into it later. Also, via the footage that I'll be using for the video, there will be minor spoilers for the miniseries and the pilot episode. Besides spoiler sections that I'll have warnings for, I'll do my best to not spoil the show as much as I can. Inevitably, there will be some spoilers seen via the footage, and I'll throw some Battlestar Galactica deadlock footage in there to spice things up. I've just played the tutorial and the first mission, and so far it's pretty fun. I like how it uses the same sound for Dratus as it does in the show when you open the map. Very nice. But seriously, if you haven't already, go watch the show. Stop watching this video and binge watch all 4 seasons right now, you'll thank me later. But for now, let's start with what Battlestar Galactica is even about. At some point, humanity creates AI machines called Cylons. Eventually, they rebel against humanity, causing the first human-Cylon war. The Cylons are defeated, and they leave Caprica, the name of the planet that humanity resides upon. 40 years later, the Cylons return, except now they look like humans, and they destroy Caprica along with 99% of humanity, with the other 1% being those aboard the Battlestar Galactica. Actually, it's closer to 0.001%, just to emphasize how little is left of the human race. The show follows the crew and personnel of the Galactica as they have to leave Caprica to not only escape the Cylons, but also to find a new home. The show uses this premise to explore incredibly complex themes, as well as creating opportunities for really creative storytelling. For example, the first episode of the main show after the miniseries is called 33, and honestly, it's probably in the top 5 best episodes in the whole show. I'll be spoiling quite a bit of this episode, so skip to this part of the video if you want to avoid spoilers entirely. The premise is pretty simple. The Galactica is on the run, and they're doing FTL jumps to get as far away from Caprica as possible. The only problem is that they're actively being chased by a Cylon vessel that jumps to their coordinates every 33 minutes. And this happens over and over again for 5 days. The stress, fatigue, and intensity of the situation ramps up over the course of the episode, leading to incredible character moments as they're tested in ways that they've never been before. Not only does this make us learn and care about the characters even more than we already do, but this also sets up the template for most of the episodes in the show. See, BSG was written and created by Ronald D. Moore, who has a particular writing style that I really love. He starts every episode by laying out a problem directly to the audience and then spends the rest of the episode fixing it, or at least trying to fix it. Now you're probably thinking, yeah, isn't that how every TV show works? And although you're not wrong, firstly, relax, okay, you don't need to be so aggressive. But secondly, Moore is a lot more direct about it than most other writers. He straight up tells the audience the plan for the episode by having 2 or more characters discuss the issue at the beginning. In BSG, there's a lot of ground to cover in each episode, so you gotta get the basics out quickly and concisely. Despite its simplicity, this isn't treating the audience like they're dumb. I think it's actually the opposite. The show deals with incredibly intense questions like, should an AI machine have rights? Do the ends really justify the means no matter how horrific the means are? Is it okay to lie to the people you care about when you think it'll help your odds of survival? The complexities of these questions are explored by having a solid foundation to start with. And Moore does this in other work as well, like For All Mankind, another amazing show that also starts each episode with a thesis statement to the viewer. The reason why this writing style works so well is because it makes every episode easily accessible every single time. The first few minutes are spent getting the audience into the episode by introducing the problem, what's at stake, and sometimes even possible solutions. That way, the viewer understands everything that's going on off the bat. It's also a great way to introduce problems along the way based on the initial premise that force the characters to make difficult decisions. It gets you immediately invested as there's a problem to solve, and it almost feels like you're actively involved in the situation. But it also gets you to empathize with the decision makers, as they have to make really tough calls that you may not agree with, but you can at least understand. These moments can also act as a vehicle for larger debates about the human condition and who we are as a species. All of this comes from a really strong foundation at the beginning of each episode that Ronald D. Moore is a master of. The other thing I want to mention is how death is treated in the show. Because of mankind's minuscule population, each and every death is really significant, and when something truly tragic happens, the crew never forget it. There's stuff that happens in the first season that is brought up in seasons 3 and 4 because of their horrifying consequences. With less than 50,000 people left, humanity now has to be careful in ways they didn't have to before. Now, I have to talk about the bad episode I mentioned earlier, called Black Market. As a quick disclaimer, I'm not here to objectively decree what is good and what is bad. If you like this episode, more power to you, but I personally really don't like it. I will be spoiling parts of this episode, so skip here to avoid spoilers. This episode gets so much wrong. Tonally, it just doesn't fit the show. It feels more like a dumb 80s action movie than a thought-provoking narrative befitting a show like BSG. Its other cosmic wrong is that it almost ruined the character of Lee Adama entirely by having him supposedly fall in love with this woman because she reminds him of an ex he had on Caprica, and also so that he can pretend to be a father figure to her daughter whilst also battling mob bosses and gangsters in a black market that exists within the civilian fleet. It's so weird and is completely out of character for him. It's like he's using this story as a kind of fantasy for a life he never had, where he has a wife and a child and he goes on this really cool action adventure. It could be an interesting narrative, but just not really for this show, not really for this character. To be fair, the episode is self-aware about this fantasy, but even with that being the case, it doesn't absolve the show of any wrongdoing. If I steal your car then admit to it, does that mean it's okay that I stole your car? Yes, because you're not deserving of such a wonderful automobile. Yeah, I'm talking to you, Matthew. And I think the writers knew that this episode was a mistake because, except for a brief mention of the black market later in the show, the events of this episode are never brought up again. Everything about his ex or this weird fantasy family are immediately dropped. I really don't know why they thought this would be a good idea for his character or for the show as a whole. In fact, I'm not sure what these writers were on this season, because the very next episode is called Scar, and it's also regarded as one of the weaker episodes. Personally, I like Scar as we get an insight into the lives of the pilots and how stressful their day-to-day is, especially for Kat. But I can understand why some people don't like this episode that much. It very much feels like a filler episode in a show that doesn't really have filler episodes. But besides that, the show is amazing. A couple small bumps in the road, and the rest is top tier. What Moore also does really well is plot twists. Good lordeth aboveth, the twists in the show are second to none. They never feel cheap, they're always well executed, and some of them, especially later on in the show, feel like they were planned from the very beginning. With Cylons looking like humans now, this is the perfect setup for some mind-bending revelations, and the show is really aware of this. There's this paranoia that permeates across the ship about who could be a Cylon, causing this distrust not only between strangers, but also between friends. The reason why the plot twists work so well, whether about Cylons or otherwise, is because they are always the start of a new discussion, a new theme. Now, I'm going to be spoiling one of the plot twists that happens in one of the very first episodes of the entire show. Here's the minor spoiler warning. Skip to this point in the video if you don't want anything spoiled at all. It's revealed that Boomer, who is featured prominently throughout the miniseries and the pilot episode, is an undercover Cylon. This is an amazing twist for a few reasons. Firstly, we know that she has a romantic relationship with Chief Tyrrell, and she also has close personal relationships with other members of the Galactica, so now all of this is in jeopardy as we expect at some point for her true identity to be revealed. Secondly, she doesn't know she's a Cylon. The theory already proposed in the episode that there are other Cylon agents aboard the fleet after the news reporter is suspected has now been fully proven, opening up the possibility for others to be revealed under similar circumstances. These are the types of plot twists that you can expect in the show. There are a few twists that are more thought-provoking on a conceptual level, and that don't really affect the main narrative of the characters in a significant way, but for the most part they fundamentally change the dynamic of the show, and they're amazing. There's a part of me that wishes I could erase my memory of the show, just so I can rewatch it and experience the amazing characters, stories, and plot twists all over again. The acting in this show is also incredible. Edward James Olmos as Willie Madame is one of the best casting choices in TV history. He embodies this role in such an amazing way. It's one of those performances where I forget that he's an actor, it just feels real. The same goes for every single other performance, even the side characters, because the casting and performances are just that good. Even Darth Maul is in this show. Katie Sackhoff gives the performance of the century as Starbuck, who herself is one of the best characters in the show, and actually, I have to gush about Starbuck right now because oh my god, this is one of the best characters in fiction. She should have won every award on the planet for her performance. 15 out of 10 would let Starbuck punch me. Jamie Bamber as Lee Adama is also perfect casting.
You're not even listening to me. Why can't you get this through your head? Zach did not belong in that plane. He shouldn't have been there. He was only doing it for you.
He also delivers the best monologue in the show, which was apparently written by him the night before they shot the scene, although I'm not 100% sure if it's confirmed. Tomo Penniket, if I'm saying that correctly, I'm sorry if I'm not, plays an alternate universe Captain America and no one can tell me different. Trisha Helfer, like Sackhoff, nails every single scene as Six. Also, we can't talk about characters without talking about Gaius Baltar. I don't have the words to express the love-hate relationship I have with this short duke. This is one of those characters that you love to hate, and you just know that whenever this guy's in a scene, something insane is gonna happen.
Doctor.
Now this is just a fraction of the cast. There are many, many more actors who give incredible performances. I want to keep spoilers to a minimum, so I won't mention certain actors and their performances because there are just certain scenes that I don't want to show or even refer to. Just know that every performance is amazing. BSG is also shot in a really interesting way too. Instead of having these CGI-filled visual spectacles, the show is presented almost as a documentary, with handheld cameras and a whole lot of shakiness. It really grounds the setting so that despite the sci-fi-ness of Galactica, it always feels like it's happening in the real world. This also circumvents potential budgetary issues by not really involving heavy CGI or really complicated shots. The music in this show is also just chef's kiss, and just so many unforgettable tracks. Kara Remembers, absolute banger. Gator's Lament, angelic. Also shout out to Alessandro Giuliani for not only giving a brilliant performance as Felix Gator, but also for actually performing this song as he's a classically trained singer too.
My life you can take to ever please, just one day wake to have a please.
But the soundtrack is really unique in that, for a sci-fi show, it uses a wide variety of instruments from all around the world, which really adds to the realistic feel of the show. There's no heavy electronic music, although in sci-fi that goes really hard. Just listen to the Dark Tide soundtrack by Jesper Kidd, but that kind of music just doesn't really work for a show like this. The composer was probably just some small timer that no one really knows about, except that it was Bear McCreary, who also worked on, among others, God of War, Call of Duty Black Sails, Outlander, The Walking Dead, and Godzilla. He went so hard on BSG that he made the soundtrack blood-related by having his own brother perform one of the songs on the track. I won't say which song, I won't say when it happens. All I'll say is that whenever I rewatch that scene, I get goosebumps. I do very briefly want to mention the fact that Sam Esmail, it was the guy who created Mr. Robot. He was at the helm of a reboot of Battlestar Galactica, but it looks like it's kind of dead in the water. And I say good, leave it, don't reboot it. The show itself is a reboot as well, so if there's a reboot of a reboot, it's just more complicated. Plus also, the show is basically perfect. I would rather they just leave it as is. It has incredible acting, filmmaking, writing, plot twist, set design, character design, everything. The fact that the cast still go to conventions to talk about their experiences making the show speaks so much to not only the quality of BSG, but the effect that it's had on fans over the years. Now, I don't really want to talk too much about my personal life on this channel, but I think it's only appropriate here. I first watched the show with my dad when I was maybe 9 or 10. I was far too young to understand what was going on, but I remember really enjoying it, and so we made a semi-annual tradition of watching the show. As I got older, I understood more and more, although I always noticed something else with each rewatch. That tradition faded away somewhere as schedules got busier and priorities changed, but I still find myself going back to the show every so often. It has both a nostalgic and a timeless quality to it, and with the episode structure that I described earlier, it's really easy to get back into. The moment you start watching the miniseries, a week will have gone by and you'll have watched the whole show. It's just that good, that well made. And maybe I'll pick up the tradition again, who knows? I guess only time will tell. I just know that I've loved the show from the first time I started watching it, and I'll always cherish it. So go watch it and have your life changed, and I'll say you're welcome in advance. With all that being said, thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video. Also, don't watch Razor, it's bad.